3 minutes, councilors, 3 minutes. I'm calling the November 22nd, 2021 special meeting of the Roswell City Council to order. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Councilor Stubbs.
Present.
Councilor Sanchez. Councilor Best.
Here.
Councilor Kinnard. Councilor Roebuck.
Here.
Councilor Lopez.
Present.
Councilor Foster.
Present.
Councilor Perry.
Present.
Councilor Moore.
Here.
Councilor Oropesa.
Here.
Mayor Kintai.
Present.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Councilor Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I'd spoken with you, is it appropriate for me to ask some questions concerning number 2 before we determine its place on the roll? Or do we need to?
Why don't we deal with that after we deal with 1? If it doesn't apply, then it's irrelevant. If it does apply, we can debate it then. I have asked that it be placed so that we can have the discussion and any discussion that it may precipitate. So if you will not make the motion to approve the agenda, I will call on another counselor.
Mr. Mayor, as I've discussed, I'm not sure if I'm on, I can't hear well. As I discussed with you earlier, I'm concerned. I understand the
All right.
concerns
Thank you,
that were-
Counselor. Counselor Foster. For the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
No,
point
Counselor.
of order,
No. Counselor,
point of order.
what is your point of order?
I'm willing to make a motion, but that motion may very well be to exclude that.
I understand that.
Then I will make a motion to approve the agenda, eliminating number 2, the governing body directing the city manager and the city attorney to initiate actions to have the District Court of Travis County 5th Judicial District assume the responsibilities of defining the 5 city council wards for the city of
I
Roswell.
know.
The motion would be to exclude it from the agenda.
I have a motion to approve the agenda excluding item number 2. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Counselor Foster. Is there discussion or debate?
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, would you repeat who was the second on that?
Foster.
Thank you.
And I have at 5:04 Counselor Kenner joining us. Here's the point, Council. If item number 1 does not pass, we cannot take any other action. With item 2 on the agenda, we can at least have a discussion about what the options are, even if we don't approve item 2. But if item 2 is struck from the agenda, there may not be any discussion because it is removed from the agenda. So, any other discussion? I will ask for a roll call vote on the agenda as presented by Counselor Perry. Ms. Call, please, a yes or aye approves the agenda, striking item number 2. A yes or aye approves the agenda. A yes or aye approves the agenda, striking item 2. A no or nay rejects it. Ms. Call, please call the roll.
Counselor Perry?
No
Aye.
discussion, Mr. Mayor?
Nobody signed up. I'm sorry, Counselor, I didn't see your name. I apologize. Hold that. Counselor Stubbs wishes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is, I don't understand item 2 because the governing body of the city directs the manager to initiate action to have the district court. Does that mean the city manager is going to sue us?
That's going to be the discussion when we get to item number 2, if it is approved on the agenda. If it is not approved, we will not be discussing this in any way, shape, or form.
Because am I wrong in just thinking that something doesn't go to court unless there is a suit filed?
That's a question to be
correct?
discussed if that is on the agenda. If it's not on the agenda, we will not be talking about it.
All right.
All right, once again, Ms. Call, please call the roll. A yes or aye approves the agenda, striking item 2. A no or nay rejects the agenda.
Counselor Perry?
Aye.
Counselor Moore?
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez?
Yes.
Counselor Stubbs?
Yes.
Counselor Lopez?
He's still muted.
Counselor Lopez?
Counselor, if you're going to unmute your microphone. Counselors Oropesa and Roebuck, you may want to do the same thing at this time.
Counselor Lopez, can you hear me?
Counselor Lopez, you are still muted. Okay,
There you go. How's that?
yes.
Perfect. Counselor Lopez?
Aye.
Counselor Best?
Yes.
Counselor Roebuck?
Yes.
Counselor Kennard?
Yes.
Counselor Foster?
Yes.
Counselor Oropesa?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
All right, we're on item number 1. Counselor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion for us to vote on ordinance 2111 as amended.
I have a motion by Counselor Foster. Go ahead. Oh, it's not on. Counselor Foster to vote on proposed ordinance 2111 as amended at the last meeting. Do I have a second? I have a second by Counselor Best. All right. Mr. Patterson, do you want to reiterate anything again?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will not go over everything that I talked about at the public hearing because you've all heard me say it about a dozen times now. I will just reiterate that as we get closer and closer to the election, the necessity of passing redistricting becomes more and more important because every day we get closer, the likelihood of encountering legal difficulties as a result of people being able to claim that they did not have fair notice in order to run increases. So the faster we do this, the better. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, councilors, I have 5 individuals that have signed up to speak on this matter. We held the public hearing last time, but they did sign up to speak, so I will call on you at this point. What I will do, ladies and gentlemen, is ask for 3 of you to line up at a time. After the first person speaks, I will ask for the 4th person to join the queue. After that, the 2nd person speaks, I'll ask for the 5th and final to join the queue. You have 3 minutes to speak. Please clearly state your name and address for the record. And then your 3 minutes, you can say as you wish. The first 3 individuals are Sarah MacArthur, Frank Sanchez, and Larry Conley. Sarah MacArthur, Frank Sanchez, Larry Conley, please come up and line up. Go ahead and state your name.
Okay. Excuse me, my name is Sarah MacArthur. I live at 609 Mimosa Drive. I think I'm in the green ward over there on the map.
Can you get a little closer to the microphone and speak a little louder?
Yes. So I'm not really sure what you're proposing with that number 1. Are you saying, which map are you going for? Which map are you saying you want to vote for? Can someone answer that for me?
We are on the proposed agenda, proposed ordinance 2111 as amended, and it was amended at the last public council meeting.
So is that H or
That's
G?
G.
Yeah, so then I was going to ask that you consider H because I think that it's more equitable. And in terms of the population density, and I had a problem with precinct 18 sticking out into the Netherlands up there on the top. I don't understand why you needed to do that when you could find a population. I mean, if you're supposed to have contiguous borders, that's not really a contiguous border. That's dividing up the top precinct or ward. I don't know, what ward is that? Patterson, can you help me with that? What ward is that? The top one? I'm sorry. The top one on 2. Okay, so 2. Where precinct 18 is, I don't really understand why you need to dip into that one. I know it's about population, of course, but can't you just duck down and keep the borders contiguous? Because doing that seems to have some sort of a political agenda to it. In my mind, in my peace of mind, and this is a non-political election, is it not? And then for the next 10 years, it's going to be that way. So I would just consider that this is a way of gerrymandering. That's my opinion, and I don't think that that's acceptable. So I would rather you went with map H. So that's what I have to say.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Conley, and then after Mr. Conley is Mr. Gomez.
Get this right here. Can you hear me there?
Yep.
Yep. Frank Sanchez, 1611 South Cottonwood Drive. I'm going to start by talking about thanking the mayor, Senator Adair, and the council. From my perspective, the conversation of choosing a plan has moved closer to resolution over the past few weeks, in my opinion. I appreciate that you allowed me, Councilwoman Stubbs, Councilman Oropesa, to sit down and develop a map. And I appreciate that you lent some time of Senator Adair to get that done and for us to submit a plan. I thought that was productive and helpful to the conversation. I prefer Plan H and F1 amended. I'm going to actually start with my last point in case I run out of my 3 minutes, okay? Why I prefer these plans, just in case I do run out of my allotted time. One of the primary reasons for supporting this plan, it puts 61 into Ward 1, takes it out of Ward 5, increasing the Hispanic majority population in Ward 1 and reducing it slightly in Ward 5. Overall, the plans, in my opinion, meet important redistricting principles: equal protection, keeps communities of interest together, compact and contiguous. In addition, the plan creates 3 60-plus Hispanic minority districts. In my opinion, the plan is a good reflection of the changing demographics of Roswell, a good reflection of the Hispanic population, and respects communities of interest. An added benefit is it keeps all council members in their respective awards. It is, I call it, it is a leave as is plan while respecting the growing Hispanic population. I hope the conversation advances tonight in a way that leads to a fair plan for everyone in Roswell. I appreciate the conversation, the accommodation, and the deliberation on getting to a fair plan. Thank you.
All right, and then I will ask for Preston Marshall to join the queue. Mr. Conley, hang on. Come up there and say you don't want to say anything. So we get on the record.
Larry Conley, 2815 Encanto. I do not wish to speak. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Gomez.
Jesse James Gomez, 2514 North Grand. I want to voice my opinion that I strongly support Plan G as a fair and equitable plan for the growth of Roswell. As a Hispanic male, I am a voter, and I do believe this is the best way to move forward in Roswell with the current population, which has not really changed over much over these past couple of years. But I do, again, strongly support Plan G. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And finally, Mr. Marshall.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Preston Marshall. I reside at number 4 Sunshine. I also support Plan G as I feel that this is a reasonable direction for Roswell to go. Our population has stayed relatively the same for the past decade, and I feel that this is a positive direction for us to go as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, councilors, we are on proposed ordinance 21-11 as amended, also known as Plan G as in George. I have no one wishing to speak. Okay, Councilor Oropesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start it off with the fact that Councilor Stubbs and myself and Mr. Frank Sanchez worked on Plan F, and that Plan F has evolved into what I believe has evolved into Plan G, and let me back up. It evolved into the amended Plan F, and then into Plan G, and then into Plan H. And I would like to ask some questions to Mr. Adair. First of all, if he agrees with me with my assessment of the evolution of Plan F all the way through Plan H. Just to make sure that if he agrees with me or not.
Mr. Mayor, I think it actually took like 5 maps within the F group, and that emerged finally as Plan H as well.
Counselor, you still have the floor.
Okay, so with that in mind, let me also remind the council that on numerous times during the workshops and even the council meeting, the thing that Mr. Patterson explained, the state statutes concerning quiet is required for the cities to redistrict according to NMSA 1978, Section 1-3-113. And there was two points of interest that he emphasized. Of course, the first one was the number of persons in each district must be as nearly equal in population as practical within 5% of the mean. And number 2, districts shall not split precincts unless necessary to comply with federal law or preserve communities of interest. And so with that in mind, I want to talk to Mr. Dare about the splitting of precincts, and in particularly the meaning of the word contiguous. As I understood Mr. Adair in one of the workshops, he indicated to Councilor Best that he had 25 years of experience. And please correct me, Mr. Adair, if I misspeak. And so my question to Mr. Adair is, during the 25 years of experience, have the federal and/or state requirements that were explained by Mr. Patterson, have they changed as far as you know? And I am more interested specifically on the requirement of the concept of the word contiguous. Have they changed?
Mr. Mayor and Councilor, they have not changed.
Okay, thank you. And then starting with Plan F, you expressed a couple of concerns to Mr. Nebb via an email concerning the proposed amended Plan F. Those two concerns, as I understood it, included a section of Precinct 41, which is currently in Ward 2, which includes the zoo and the Thunderbird trailer park along Atkinson Street. The other concern, as I understood it, was a section of East 24th Street by East Country Club, which is in Precinct 41 in Ward 2, but was placed in Ward 3 in 2010. So your contention, as I understood it, was that these two areas did not meet the contiguous requirement because, in your opinion, they were not contiguous to Ward 2. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Oropeza, I think you're referring to exactly the same issue that you and I spent a better part of an hour on in the conference room of Ms. Call last week, and I placed all of your map preferences into the corresponding districts, wards that you wanted them, and that, I think that's how Plan H came about. So I think I've covered all of the things that you're talking about. We resolved, you and I, and along with Mr. Patterson and a couple of other attendees, Mr. Nebb, last week, unless I'm missing something.
Mr. Adair, can you explain to me what your two concerns were with amended Plan F?
All of the plans, Mr. Oropesa, all of the plans that you submitted were either non-contiguous or they were outside legal deviation limits. Each of
Well,
them,
could you, I'm sorry.
I explained
Thank
them
you,
at the time, they're all in writing, and each one of them I brought back either to be contiguous or to be within the allowable deviation, whichever it was. So I've on each one of your plans has had, each one of your plans has had one of those problems, if not both. And, but we fixed them all for you, with you, just as pizza was being ordered last week. And that is Plan H before you. So I don't understand what the issue is at this moment.
well, what I'm trying to understand from you, Mr. Adair, is specifically what were the issues that you had with Plan Amended F that led you to believe that there was some issues with the contiguous aspect of the map? Can you explain to me exactly what 2 points or 3 points or 4 points that you had with that particular plan?
The districts that you had certain precincts or precinct parts in did not touch the other parts of the same district that you were hoping they were all in.
Would you say
Everything,
that
all
those
your
two-
precincts and precinct parts have to be within the same district. You can't have a precinct located on East Albuquerque divided by 4 miles of a different district and then say it's connected to Cheryl Lane. That you cannot do.
Okay, so let me follow up with, are you specifically talking about the zoo and the Thunderbird Trailer Park not being contiguous to Ward 2?
I'll have to go turn the map on. Although we went over these specific things for an hour, but I'm going to go look at the map and have it pop up here if I can.
Mr. Mayor,
Counselor?
could I ask to see if Mr. Adair can put up amended Plan F? The one that he's showing right there is I believe is H.
It is H. Mr. Adair, can you do a amended Plan F?
Thank you. While we're on Plan H, where this, I think you can see this hand moving around here. This is one of the things that, one of the parts of Precinct 41 that you had in plan in District 3, I believe. And then this is another part that you had in District 3. As you can see, they don't, neither of them fits, neither of them touches District 3. And that's the problem. So what we did when I met with you is I moved this to District 1, which it's contiguous with, or touching. And
Mr. Adair, I hate to interrupt you, but can I take a step at one step at a time so I can make my point? Can I have amended Plan F on the screen?
okay, there it is.
Okay, so let me continue with my, if you would leave that on the screen, I would appreciate it. So let me continue with my questions to you. So correct me if I'm making a wrong assumption. My assumption is that all demographers must follow the same guidelines set by federal and state guidelines. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And based on your interpretation, and I'm basing it on what I believe you have indicated to me, and I believe you just indicated it again, of the areas are concerned with amended Plan F 2020, which is College Street, right off of Atkinson, all the way to the wastewater. That's the area of concern, right?
They're almost the entire part of Precinct 41 that you can see coming in from the east and hitting the railroad track, and also touching parts of Ward 1 below College, and touching parts of Ward 3 above College. Those are all concerns. All of that is you have all of that area as part of Ward 2, and none of those areas I just mentioned can be a part of Ward 2 as depicted on this map.
Okay. So let me go ahead, let me go forward. So with that description that you just gave, I have to conclude that the message that you're sending, or at least received by me anyway, that you are directly or indirectly implying that the demographer that created the current map for the city of Roswell 10 years ago was wrong, whether intentional or unintentionally, to provide a map that was out of compliance then and has been out of compliance for the last 10 years?
I don't know. I don't have any of the records of what happened in 2011.
Do you have the current map that you can put on the screen and see if that same area that you're talking about is the same one that we have on Plan F?
I see the current plan, the current map, and I would say that that is not contiguous. That's correct.
Mr. Adair, I have the current plan, the current map here. And the difference between the plan that you have on the screen right now and the current map is those same areas from the wastewater all the way to College, and actually all the way to the railroad track. All that is in red, signifying that that is in Ward 2. If you want to compare the current map right now that we have in place, and you compare it to the map that you're calling H, that's on the screen, the same shaded area that you have on H is the same shaded area that is right now on the current map.
Yes, and as I pointed out, it's not contiguous.
Okay. So you're saying that the demographer that did the current map was mistaken?
I can't speak to what was done 10 years ago.
But
I don't know.
But you're telling us that the current map is out of compliance and has been for the last 10 years?
The map which shows the gap that you see there on the screen is not contiguous.
Well, I'm not sure I understand which one you have on the screen.
I'm showing a census. I'm showing a census block.
Councilor Orpesa, Councilor Stubbs would really like to add some information on what happened 10 years ago, but you have the floor, sir.
I will yield to Councilor Stubbs.
Councilor Stubbs.
Thank you, Councilor Arpesa. What I recall 10 years ago, your question is whether or not being contiguous was changed. It has not, but what has changed since 2011 was the ability then to split precincts. So I think we're talking about two different things, because in 2011 we split several precincts in order to equalize population, and it was allowed then. I think that's what is no longer allowed today, and someone could correct me if I'm wrong, and I yield back to you. Thank you.
Councilor Orpesa, you have the floor.
Hey, thank you. Let me go on to another area, and that is precinct 36. On map G, or plan G, precinct 36 is split between 3 and 4. Is that not correct, Mr. Adair?
You want to go back to map G now? Is that right?
Or even in H, I believe. But G is the one that is in question right now, that was the one that was...
Okay, you're done with... You're finished with Plan F. I can close that out?
Well, for right now, yes.
And you want Plan H?
Well, G is on Plan G specifically. I want to address precinct 36.
Okay, I'm looking up for what that's been named. Hold on a second. Plan F modified working is Okay, this is Plan G.
Precinct 36. Is Precinct 36 split between Ward 3 and Ward 4?
Yes.
Yes, yes, it is.
And even though it has been explained that we shouldn't split precincts if at all possible,
Yeah, but I'm not the one who said that. I mean, every city in New Mexico has split precincts. Roswell has numerous split precincts. So that provision of the law is very much misunderstood. Almost no municipality in the state, even the tiny ones, Hagerman, Dexter, Lake Arthur, have precinct boundaries that match up with their city's political boundaries. Therefore, they're part of split precincts, all of them, because the cities were laid out many, many years ago, and unfortunately, a lot of them hit just on surveyed section lines or township lines, all kinds of things that don't have any geographical feature that you can see. That's unfortunate. That's what we face with. So I can point to you probably a dozen split precincts in the city. 36 is just one of them.
so which ones are the other ones? I know 41 is split into three, or one map shows split into three. And if I'm understanding you correctly, then we can go ahead and split precincts as much as we need to. Is that correct?
You are allowed to split precincts to preserve communities of interest, and that is a very, that has a highly varied definition based on who's looking at it.
So what is the problem then with 41, the small section that we're talking about, if you can split those precincts?
You can split
Well, I have a
precincts.
hard time
You can split
understanding,
precincts, but you cannot have districts or wards which are not contiguous. I think you're mixing two separate concepts. You can split precincts. I think I even provided Roswell with a perfect plan. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But for most entities, I show them what a perfect plan, one that has exact 0.00% deviation between the wards. And to get that, you have to split precincts all over the place. And but you have lots of split precincts in the city already. You ask for other examples. 11, where I live, is split. I'm in the city, but the people to the west of me live in the so-called Pecan Grove, and and they don't really live in it, but that's what. And that's outside the city, but they're still in precinct 11. Precinct 9 is split in a similar way.
Oranges.
Go ahead.
I'm saying you're mixing apples and oranges because what we're talking right now is city limits only. I understand that a lot of precincts overflow into the county, and there's 14 precincts that overflow into the county. But what we're talking about right now is property within the city limits that as far as I understood it, needed to be connected in one way or another in order to meet the contiguous definition, the definition of contiguous. Because Plan F, when we came up with Plan F, we were told that we couldn't use the county portion of Precinct 36 to be able to argue that Precinct 36 on the west could be considered contiguous to Precinct 36 on the south. And now you're telling me that by using precinct 11, you're pretty much telling me that yes, we can. Or at least that's what I'm understanding.
I'm not responsible for what you're understanding. I can only say what the facts are. And that is precinct 36 is a precinct within the county. But when you start drawing the political boundaries of a city, which it's the responsibility of the city council to do, you may have huge sections of a county precinct that are left out of a city. And that's what precinct 36 is, as an example. But you cannot, you're left with just the city itself, the 29 square miles of Roswell. That's all that you can draw within. You can't say, well, this would connect if we were bigger. This would connect if we annexed all of precinct 36. Roswell would be a lot bigger, would have more population, and you know what? These two districts would then connect. You can't do that. You either have territory, land that's within the city's boundaries, or you don't. And part of 36 is out west in the city's boundary, and part of 36 is in the south central part of Roswell, on the west side of the south central part of Roswell. But within the city's boundaries, those two pieces of land do not connect with each other. And they're not contiguous. They would if you tonight you decided to annex all of precinct 36. Then you would have a point. But until then, you don't.
What if you look at amended Plan F? Amended Plan F connects both precincts to the point where they are contiguous. And you don't have to rely on the county portion of precinct to be able to make the argument that they connect. Because we took precinct 36 and 31 and moved them into Ward 4 in order to satisfy the issue of it being contiguous.
Okay, I have Plan F revised now up on the screen. So this is a plan I worked with, and you can see that your plan over on the west side with precincts 20 and 36 are not contiguous, and therefore
No, sir, that you don't have that plan on the screen. I don't know which one do you have, but if you look at amended Plan F, and I've got it right here, it shows where we made the adjustment for 36 on the west, and we also make the adjustment to make 31 and move it into Ward 4, which in turn hits 35 and then in turn hits 36.
I'll open Plan F. Okay, Plan F has contiguity problems, as you can see, in a similar way. I just had.
I'm not talking about the original Plan F. I'm talking about the amended Plan F.
I just had that up there. Revised Plan F.
I wish I could show it to you because I've got the map right here. The amended Plan F has precinct 36, 31, 35, 33, 36 again, 83, 82, 81, 84, 93, all those precincts
Yes, I'm looking at it. You're right. You just named off all the precincts that are in it, yes. 33, 35, 36, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 93.
The one that you have on the screen shows 31 being in 3.
Yes, and that is what you originally proposed. And we did change it, and as I've gone over, this has transmogrified through 5 different maps to what you now have and is known as Plan H.
Mr. Adair, if you bear with me, if you would put up amended Plan F. This is not amended Plan F that you got on the screen. Amended Plan F starts on the west side of the town, which is 36, moves into 31, connects to 31, because 31 became 4, and then it connects to 35, and then it connects to the other 36, and connects to 33, and then that makes a connection to 83, 82, 81, 84, and 93. So the one that you have on the screen is not amended Plan F.
But I'm now looking at the one that you worked out here in town with someone, and it...
Mr. Adair, I know...
It doesn't, it is still not contiguous.
Mr. Adair,
Let's don't talk over
Mr.
each other.
Adair, if you would do me the favor of just put amended Plan F on the screen. I'm not asking for any other plans other than amended Plan F.
Okay, in the area in and around where...
That's the original. Isn't that our current map?
Where Country Club crosses the railroad tracks, you still are not contiguous at that point.
Okay, but would you agree that amended Plan F makes Precinct 36 contiguous?
The part of Precinct 36, which is out to the west on this map, is contiguous with the rest of Ward 4, yes.
Okay. So let me talk about the word contiguous. I think we're having a difficult time, you and I, agreeing on certain things. So let me ask you straight out. What is your definition of contiguous?
Something that touches something else.
Okay. Does it have to be touching 10 feet?
It has
or
to touch.
Touching 1 inch?
It has to touch.
Okay.
But it cannot be not like New Mexico and Utah.
Okay.
We have 4 corners that's very famous. We're contiguous with Colorado, we're contiguous with Arizona, but we're not contiguous with Utah. I hope that explains it.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I can ask Mr. Parker a question, please.
All right, Counselor, I would ask, however, you wrap this up. You have had the floor now for approximately 25 minutes, and there are other counselors. So if you could wrap this up after talking to Mr. Parker,
Mr.
we all
Mayor,
appreciate
that I
it.
can't ask the questions necessary for me to be able to make a point?
Counselor, you've had the floor for almost 30 minutes. I am asking you, after you speak with Mr. Parker, address the question to him, you wrap it up. I'm not asking you to stop at this point. But please, out of consideration for others, I'm asking you to summarize your points. Counselor,
I'm trying
Mr. Patterson,
to,
you
Mr.
have
Mayor, But again, this is such an important issue that I want to make sure that I get or at least try to get the answers that to help me.
All right, Counselor, this is our 4th meeting on this topic. So, go ahead, Counselor. Mr. Patterson is waiting your question.
Yeah, Mr. Parker, can you give us the legal definition of contiguous as it pertains to redistricting?
There is not a legal definition that I have seen in a statute or published opinion in New Mexico as to the definition of contiguous for purposes of defining electoral districts. That's not to say that there's never been any judge that's decided it, but there's not a published opinion with binding precedent that I have found. I will tell you that the majority opinion among jurisdictions around the country is that a point contiguity, in other words, contiguous at a single point is insufficient to create contiguity for purposes of election districts. That is around looking at different jurisdictions and states around the nation. Most have held that.
Okay. And so, would you agree that the Merriam-Webster dictionary is a credible source to find the definition of contiguous?
Yes, sir. I would agree with you that the bare definition of contiguous is touching along a border or at a point. I wouldn't dispute that. That's the dictionary definition. However, again, I think that when you look around at how courts have looked at how election districts are created and what constitutes contiguous for those purposes, that has not generally been accepted. Because I'll tell you, contiguous for some purposes is not contiguous for others, thanks to the way that courts define things and consider things in different contexts. So, for example, this is exactly how we got here. For purposes of like annexation, a point, and there's all kinds of things you can do, like what we're looking at here, where you shoot out a little tendril and grab a parcel. That kind of contiguity is permitted in annexation, not permitted in defining electoral districts. And so part of the problem we're having is that the way the city's boundaries have been defined for purposes of annexation does not create a very good match for purposes of contiguity in terms of electoral districts. So we're stuck with having to work with the city boundaries as they currently exist. And so to the extent that a precinct is, so there's two, when we talk about splitting a precinct, what we're talking about is drawing a ward boundary through the middle of an existing precinct within the city. Not the same as where the city limits themselves divide a precinct, and so that different pieces of the precinct are connected to the city in different places. That's not splitting a precinct for purposes of defining ward boundaries. I hope that helps.
So, in your opinion, Mr. Parker, the area in question right now, which is the zoo and the trailer park, the fact that they touch College Street, which is a city road, which is about, I would think, 50 to 60 feet in width. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the College Street, isn't that considered city property?
Yes, and to your point, they are contiguous in the bare meaning of the word contiguous in touching at a point. However, not only do I think that would not necessarily fly with a judge, but you also have the problem that precincts need to be compact. And where you've got two pieces touching at a point, that's not compact.
Okay, since I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor, since you have indicated that I shouldn't take too much time, but I would hope that you would would treat the other ones just the same as you did me. Thank you.
All right, so counselors, you're limited to about 30 minutes each. Any further discussion, counselors? Counselor Moore, you have the floor.
All right. Now that I got all the definitions, can y'all hear me?
A little louder. Yeah, just get a little closer. You can do it. Use your teacher voice.
I've been using that all day. So again, my struggle with the two is that when the changes occur, not necessarily. I guess I'm trying to see his point, and I think Mr. Councilor Pace's point was for one map it was okay, but now for the next map it's not. So I'm guessing that's what, you know, depending on who's reading it or understanding it, is the point that he's making. For me, I don't know if I could be wrong, but if
Contiguous. Connecting. How about
they're
connecting?
connected by some points. is the rule, and I get is Councilor Pierce saying that road is he trying to say that the road itself makes it contiguous, not because the width of the road makes it contiguous? Is that what I'm trying to get the understanding of?
Well, I can't speak for Councilor Opesa, but I believe that that is something like the argument that he's making.
I know I have my reasons for, you know, as I requested earlier, I said maybe if we just all came up with a couple of reasons of why we felt, you know, we stood for one map, then we wouldn't have to keep struggling with the same definition of a word and this, that, and word, and because a lot of times if Councilor Best can explain to me very much why this point without arguing or without being is the word contentious, is that the nice word, without being, then I might get help, you know, we can help make a decision. My question is to Mr. Patterson, is if we're still on amended, how do we ever get to decide if it's changing from G to H? What happens? I guess I'm new and I understand. So we're talking about, well, remember he said we were the amended, you know.
Yes, currently the motion pending on the floor is that which died in the previous one for lack of enough votes, and that is to adopt the ordinance as amended for Plan G. That was the motion that was made at the last meeting.
So that is the motion we're still discussing.
Yes, that's correct. However, I would say it's within the scope of the current pending question whether or not to adopt a different map. I mean, that's all within the scope
So
of
would
this
that be a
motion.
whole new motion, or would that this have to fail and then we'd have to vote for H? Or no, if this fails, it becomes.
Ma'am, the way that this would happen is if you vote on this again and it fails, then we're back in the aspect of having to bring it back for reconsideration. So
We've lost our monitors here. It's up there. That's what we're all seeing. Sorry, Mr. Patterson, there's more.
I'm sorry, my computer logged out. Hold on.
Oh, that's this one. Oh, we don't have. I thought we don't have.
Sorry for the interruption.
I apologize.
So, do you understand my question? How do I ever? Like I said, I hope I'm not being.
No, I understand. what you're-
Okay, if we're gonna, we're still discussing G and H. The motion is for G. How do we ever get past whether we're voting on G or are we voting on H? Can you help me with that?
You may make a motion to amend to change it to H. That would be the way to do it. A motion to amend to Plan H.
Okay, gotcha. All right, I'm done for now.
All right, I have Counselor Stubbs and exhaust my list. Counselor Stubbs, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Please limit it to 30 minutes.
You do have a smile on your face, don't you?
I know. We're getting late.
As I've said before, this has been very, very difficult for me, and I hope that everyone understands that my intent is to merely do what is right and right according to the principles that have been explained to us, and that I really believe are in the best interest of the city of Roswell. I have no political or personal gains as far as my comments or my reasoning or the way I'm going to vote. I just have, again, some real problems with with G, again, particularly having to do with precincts 9 and 18 being in Ward 3 and 17 being in Ward 2. We've discussed that. I've looked at the numbers. It doesn't seem like they're going to make a big difference. And Senator Adair, I don't know if I'm looking at the right thing or not, but I see a difference of only 113 people if 9 and 18 were to be moved from 3 to 2 and then if 6 and 11 were to be moved, well, I don't think I said that right. Let me back up. If 9 and 18 on precinct G could be moved from 3 to precinct 2, and then in Ward 3, if precinct 6 and 11 could then be moved back to 2, I see the difference of 113 people. And it seems to make much more sense. Both wards would be more compact, and it creates what I believe is to be a much more natural, sensible line. I think I'm going to quit right now. Mr. Mayor, thank you.
All right. Councilors, I have no one else wishing to speak. I have Councilor Perry. Councilor Perry, you had the floor.
And I'm sorry, I was trying to write down what Counselor Stubbs had said. And I may have gotten that and I may not have. Our computer, there we go. My concern has been Precinct 6. I need to understand, and Senator Adair, you can help me, I'm confident in this, to understand what constitutes communities of interest.
Well, there are lots of examples. Some sort of traditional neighborhood in some locale. Sometimes it can be defined by perhaps an Indian pueblo or part of a reservation or a chapter on the Navajo Nation. Sometimes if it's in a congressional map, something that over 700,000 people, you might argue that you shouldn't split one of New Mexico's 20 cities with 10,000 or more people. For instance, if you have a congressional map that comes down and splits Roswell in two, and it's a congressional map, you can argue that you're leaving out something that's part of a community of interest with regard to something as large as a 700,000 person congressional district. Within the city of Roswell, again, you would look toward traditional, perhaps neighborhoods that have some sort of shared interest. It could be there are all kinds of ways. There are ways to define it politically, ethnically, racially, even religiously. I mean, you can look at Rama in McKinley County as having a particular community of interest that's based largely on religious grounds. There's all kinds of ways to define a community of interest.
Thank you. I yield at this time.
All right. I have Councilor Foster to exhaust my list. Councilor Foster, you have the floor.
Thank you, and this is a question I probably should have asked you earlier, but on Plan H, we have a section of 41 that goes to 3. Could I get the population number on that? That-
So which part of 41 are you referring to?
The Ward 3 that's in 41. You got to move up.
Okay, this part out here has a
No.
population of 0.
Right, and then the part that's in the city, the train tracks to the right,
Mhm.
are 41.
Yes.
So that part, the population of 41 that's in Ward 3. No, that's 41. 6 stops at the railroad. Looks to me
Looks like it's about 203 people.
203. Okay. Thank you.
Counselors,
I yield.
this has been a long evening. We've had long discussion. I think we all pretty much know where we want to go. For the sake of staff, the audience, I'm asking for a vote at this time, a roll call vote. A yes or aye approves proposed ordinance 21-11 as amended, in other words, as Plan G. If we can have that up on the screen right now, that would be best so they can see what's in front of them. A yes or aye approves what is...
Mayor.
Counselor, no, we're going to the vote. We're done. We're going to the vote. I've called for the vote. It is a yes or aye approves Plan G as the new ordinance for 2111. A no or nay rejects it. Ms. Call the roll.
Counselor Perry,
No, with explanation.
Counselor Moore, Counselor Sanchez, Counselor Stubbs,
No.
Counselor Lopez,
Yes.
Counselor Best,
Yes.
Counselor Roebuck,
Yes.
Counselor Kennard,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Oropesa,
So, with explanation, please.
Mr. Mayor, it is a tie vote.
Yes.
Motion passes.
I have Counselor Perry and then Counselor Oropesa. Counselor Perry, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I feel like I've exhausted my desires in trying to help this to be what it could be. My concerns with Precinct 6, with community of interest, and their ability to have a voice. Like I said at the very beginning, as I spoke out at the meeting the other day, myself, and now that I think about it, Councilor Sanchez as well, I believe he was on council possibly when we had all of the, when I was in Ward 4 and had the base as well. So I've had a very diverse area of the city that I've represented, and I try to do that to the best of my ability. I hope that anyone who would be elected from Ward 2 would continue that and would indeed do their best to represent the folks of Precinct 6 to the best of their ability as well. I yield.
Counselor Oropesa, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want the record to reflect the fact that you cut me off didn't allow me to offer an amendment. And that, just for the record, I want it to reflect that, in my opinion, Plan G is political driven. Because if there was no intention of politics being involved, I don't think there should have been an issue with Precinct 18 being moved into 2. because this gives the impression, Mr. Mayor, that you and maybe some other ones are trying to protect one particular counselor from a potential candidate. And that is the reason that precinct 18 and 9 is so significant at this time. And I want the record to reflect that you, Mr. Mayor, should have the responsibility to let people speak and voice their voice. And at this point in time, you denied me the opportunity to be able to make an amendment. Thank you.
Let the record reflect that Councilor Pesa had the floor for over 30 minutes and did not offer any amendment at that time, interrupted after I called for the vote, not prior. Ladies and gentlemen, the time now is 6:14 p.m. We are adjourned.